Hello and welcome to the Scotland Rugby News podcast. After an interesting weekend of Six Nations action, we'll say that. I'm joined by Gav and Steph again as usual. I think there's only one place we can't start, isn't there? We've got to start at the end of the game. Gav, what were your thoughts on that?
Oh, look, I think everybody's seen the pictures. Everybody's seen those. We shared an image, a still image of the ball on the line over the on Saturday night, and yeah, it's as Gregor Townsend said after the game. Coaches and players make errors. Officials make errors. They've just got it wrong. I think they've just come to the wrong conclusion. Probably not helped by the fact that Nick Berry's decided it's on field no try, so Brian McNeice has got to find clear evidence to overturn that. Actually, just before we came on, was listening to Nigel Owens, who was obviously part of the BBC's coverage on Saturday, who's saying that the ball probably was over the line, but was it clear and obvious enough? And I think even he would probably admit, yeah, okay, hands up, they've got this wrong. And unfortunately, it's gone against Scotland, and we're just going to have to live with it. But yeah, it definitely stung on Saturday night, and you can tell by the hundreds, if not thousands, of comments across our social media platforms that people are not too happy.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen anybody except the TMO say, you know what, I'm not sure that was down, but I suppose in his view, he kind of has to go by the rules, and if he's not 100% convinced, that he has to stick with the on-field decision. But I think that's almost made it worse, Steph, hasn't it? That when you hear the conversation between the TMO and the referee, the whole way through it just sounds like, right, this is getting given, this is going to be a try, Scotland have won it at the end. But then all of a sudden it's just taken away from everybody again. It's almost made it worse.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to start, it was a try. There's absolutely there's no doubt about that. That was a try. It was on the ground. I think the fact that you can hear the TMO, the conversation between the TMO and the ref, I think that has lengthened everything for everyone, because the problem is that you can hear the TMO's thought process. That Brian McNeice has gone, right, I'm having a look at this. The ball's on the foot, and there's the ball on the ground. And then Nick Berry's come in and said, right, so I need to change my decision then. And then he's gone, oh no, wait, I need one more look. So the problem there is that we've heard the motions that he's going through in his head and out loud. And that's a problem. I think that rugby's taking a little bit of a backward step with this decision, because it's a sport that is heralded for its good communication and coming to the right decision 99% of the time, I think, anyway. And because it has, such good technology. And in this situation, we should not be able to hear the thoughts that Brian McNeice is going through. We should be seeing the replays. We should be letting them make the decision. And he should come in and say, right, Nick, I've got a decision for you. I can't see conclusive evidence to say this ball is on the ground. You need to stick with your on-field decision. And I just think that even though we can see the ball on the ground and you can debate about that, I just think that makes it sit so much worse that we heard that thought process that he was going through. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I think I do think it's good to hear what the TMO says and stuff, but I agree with that to the extent that at the end of that, when you just hear it and you hear him the whole way through, it's just like, it seems like he's going to say, yeah, it's down, we change your decision. And then the way it's just dragged away, it's just a horrible way to do it. But
just to interject on that point, I don't know if either of you've seen it, but our brilliant statsman Kevin Miller has put together on and posted on his social media a kind of blow by blow transcript of how it all unfolded. And looking at it here, the whistle goes at 80 minutes and 9 seconds. It's then they debate it for almost 3 minutes, in fact, just over 3 minutes. And Nick Berry says, so you're saying that the ball's initially on the foot, then it's gone and grounded in goal, so I'm going to change my decision. It then takes another minute. So that Brian McNeice, the TMO, says, I cannot say for certain, I don't have enough ball on the ground. And I think that's the frustration, is, as you say, Steph, whether it's the fact that we can hear the TMO or that they've they've gone one way, and then I saw somebody else had described it as unseeing what they had already seen. And that's the bit that'll stick in people's minds, is that they clearly had the ball on the line. They were happy to give the try, and they've then backed out. And that must be, for the players, that must have been so frustrating. Like when it happened, when Sam Skinner takes the ball in, you can see almost straight away Sione Tuipulotu runs in from where he's 20 meters away. He feels like it's on the line. And okay, there's always a bit of bravado in terms of players celebrating, but those looked like genuine celebrations. And conversely, I'm not convinced that the French were 100% sure that they had stopped Scotland. And I think you can tell that by some of the surprise of particularly the forwards. If you watch Tuolangi's reaction, and he's the player whose kind of arm is obstructing the view. I'm not convinced they think that they're going to get the right decision either. We could debate it for all day, but I just think that they've got it wrong. And I see we've got a couple of comments. One that says it's blatant cheating. I don't believe that. I don't believe officials set out to make the wrong call, or to stitch a team up. Everybody makes mistakes. The players and the coaches were pretty open about that. It's just a rubbish situation from a Scottish point of view that such a tight game has been decided by a decision like this, we've come out on the wrong side of it.
Yeah,
I think there does need to be a bit more clarity as well on, because obviously the ref is in charge. He's the final decision maker, but he or she. But I think that the TMO needs to be able to have a bit more authority and speak with a bit more authority, because, as you said, Gabby, he's talked himself out of it. And he's given him a minute is enough to talk yourself out of a decision like that. And I just think that although the TMO is not the decision maker, they need to be able to speak to the ref with some level of certainty and authority, because at the end of the day, the ref's going to them because they're not sure about a decision.
Yeah.
And if the TMOs then come back at you going, "Oh, I'm not really sure as well," it's not going to turn out well for anyone, I don't think.
Yeah, it's actually an interesting point that we've gone from we can get into the nitty-gritty of how the TMO works, but we've gone from, back in the day, refs asking, is it a try, yes or no, to this, I have an on-field, and that almost is a guide for the TMO. He's either just confirming if it's on-field try, or he's looking for something that's really clear evidence to be able to overturn. I think I've seen a couple of games, but not for a while, where a couple of refs have used this third question of, I don't have an on-field decision, I can't see the ball, help me out. And interestingly, I actually asked Gregor Townsend after the game if he wanted more done to take those decisions away from referees, and basically let the guy who's in the box with all the angles make the call. And as you say, Steph, maybe give that power to the TMO, who can then speak with a bit more authority. But, as Gregor said, it was actually the guy in the box who changed the ref's mind. The ref was convinced by the pictures he'd seen. And, the guy that was looking at all the monitors was the one who kind of ultimately changed the decision. What I did think, I have to admire all Scotland fans, but there was a guy in the North Stand who, as the referee was looking at the decision, was climbing up to the big screen and pointing at where the ball was touching the grass. And I mean, fair play. But it was a good effort, but not even that was sadly enough.
Yeah, that's actually what I was going to ask you about, just to see, because obviously you were there at the stadium. What was the field at the stadium when that decision was announced? Was it just complete disbelief?
Yeah, I think it was such a strange atmosphere, and I don't know if I've been at a Scotland game that the one that I can think of for in terms of dejection at the end was the Doddy Weir game in 20 17 when we nearly beat New Zealand and Stuart Hogg makes a break with the last play.
I was in the stadium for that one.
Yeah, and just remembering that emotion, it was obviously a different emotion on Saturday in terms of it was just pure frustration. But I genuinely think most people in the stadium saw the ball on the line and thought, this is going to be given. This is going to be given, and Scotland are going to win. And after 4 minutes of reasonably tense hanging about, it didn't pan out that way. And I mean, obviously, there was a huge French travelling support. They were all delighted, probably a wee bit surprised. And yeah, the Scotland fans, none too pleased.
I don't think anyone would have complained if that had been given. I'd like to think that the France players and the French fans would have accepted that decision if it had been given. I don't think you could have complained about it.
No,
yeah,
definitely not.
Fabien Galtier said after the game that he was pretty confident after the first replay that it was held up. And I am sure that was a comment made with tongue firmly placed in cheek. I am not convinced that he and Rafael Ibanez and Sean Edwards were sitting in the coach's box, not sweating about the outcome, because it could have gone either way.
Yeah, we'll move on to something a bit more positive anyway. Harry Patterson's debut came in out of the blue a couple of hours before the game that he was obviously starting, and then I thought he did an excellent game. Just kind of did everything you could want from him on his debut. I thought that he just stepped up, and I think a lot of people were a bit nervous of him starting before the game, but he just really stepped up and showed what he could do.
Yeah, I mean, I thought he was absolutely terrific. I had texts from mates and from other people saying, I haven't seen Harry Patterson play. What's he like? And there'll be a fair few people, probably hundreds of people in that stadium saying, I've never seen Harry Patterson play. And the fact he'd only played 8 games for Edinburgh, to come into that type of situation and in the circumstances he came in, like I said it in one of the pieces I wrote after the game, it shows a massive amount of trust from Gregor Townsend, but he didn't half repay it because I thought he was terrific. He gets slightly caught, I think, for BLBRA's ultimately the winning try. I think he's kind of slightly out of position there, and he kind of admitted that himself. But other than that, I mean, he had 2 touches in the first 2 minutes. One was he fielded a kick, but that'll have done his confidence no harm early doors. And then he gets on the outside of, I think it's Toma Ramos, pretty early on. And I mean, you couldn't have asked for much better from him. Somebody so inexperienced. I was really impressed, and I think that'll certainly be the first of many. Whether it's the first of many in this championship, we'll maybe wait and see with the kind of injury update that Gregor gave after the game. But I mean, he's definitely one for the future. And I thought he was terrific.
Yeah, I thought the same. He carried the ball really well. I thought his offload to Hugh Jones in the lead up to Ben White's try was fantastic. And he's such a young guy, and the fact that he just stepped up to the plate and put on a really good debut was brilliant. I think it was something like his 9th professional game or something. It was just ridiculous. And I'd seen him play for Edinburgh. He's really great, and there was no reason to not think that he was going to put on a good performance. But it's just the gravity of the situation, isn't it? It's stepping out at Murrayfield in the first home game of the Six Nations against France. It's just absolutely massive. But I thought he dealt with it really, really well. And he's one of the future. And it's great to see that a Scottish rugby academy product, as well as actually, putting himself forward to be potentially future backup to Blair Kinghorn, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's for me. It's not just his, it's not just his ability. Like, I think obviously everybody knew he was a talented player, but to have that mentality to step in against a team like France, it's just really encouraging. I think that's kind of the main thing for me. Is like, you can have all the talent in the world, but if you've not got the right head to play in a game like that at such short notice, then that's a completely different thing. But I think he deserves all the credit in the world for that.
Yeah, 100%. I think I'm interested that you talked about mentality there, Mark, because there was loads of chat before the game when it was announced that Scotland were making this change. That how do you feel if you're Rory Hutchinson? Because you've been, tearing up trees for Northampton in a Northampton team that's flying. He's played a bit of fullback. He's played fullback for Scotland, and then you don't get the opportunity. Kyle Rose, the guy they've gone to, and then you still don't get the opportunity. That must be a bit of a bitter pill to swallow for him. And it was interesting that Gregor basically had said when he picked the squad that he sees him as a centre. It's interesting that they've gone to somebody like Harry Patterson, and how does that maybe affect somebody like Hutchinson's confidence?
Yeah, but I think it's kind of similar to what we spoke about last week. It's kind of Gregor's always he's not afraid to make that big decision. So it's kind of one of those ones that you just kind of have to go along with it and be like, yeah, fair play, it's worked. And if it did, he's also going to come in for a bit of criticism, but he's been brave enough to make that decision.
Absolutely,
I think I don't know whether that sometimes playing in the Premiership damages Scottish players' chances sometimes, because it just seems like a lot of the time they will pick from Glasgow and Edinburgh. I don't know if that's because they see them play a bit more. I don't know if it's that's the reason. I would personally see Rory Hutchinson as a centre as well, really. But I do know what you mean. It's good. It's got to be hard for him to know how he's going to get into this squad, I think, at this rate. And I do think I've seen other examples of it over time. I don't know whether, I don't know why, but I don't know whether playing in the Premiership does kind of damage their chances because they don't get seen as much by Gregor Townsend, perhaps.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, I suppose. There are players who have benefited from playing in the Premiership. It didn't do somebody like a Sean Maitland any harm, and he
That's true.
was a regular in the Scotland team when he was playing down south. But yeah, it is an interesting point. I think ultimately in this instance, Rory Hutchinson's impacted by the fact that George Furbank's in great form for Northampton, and he's their fullback, and Hutchinson plays 13 for them, and is he going to get in the Scotland side ahead of Hugh Jones on form? Probably not. I thought Hugh Jones was better on Saturday than he was in Cardiff, and I also thought that of slightly deviating into a bit of a random point, but George Turner, I thought had a much better game on Saturday than he did in Cardiff. He got on the wrong side of the ref, I think, at the Principality, as did most Scots, to be fair. And his throwing kind of was a bit wayward, but I thought the line out functioned pretty well. And he gave folk a few kind of big hits and stuff as well. So yeah, I thought he played well on a slightly, as I say, random deviation.
Yeah, we'll just talk about the second half a wee bit, because it wasn't the most exciting game to watch. That second half, was it? It was a bit. I don't think there was too many neutrals that made watch it thinking this is a great game of rugby.
Do you know? I'm going to sound really boring and get a bit technical, but this thing about having 12 players in the middle of the field while two blokes kick it back and forward to each other just needs to put a stop to. Somebody just needs to, World Rugby just need to look at the laws and say, that's nonsense. It just kills the whole spectacle. And actually, maybe Finn Russell should have stood with the ball in his own 22 for 10 minutes and not let the French move, and we'd have won the game 16-10 or whatever it was. But that's not what people pay good money and a lot of money to go and watch. And it just, it's not for me. That needs looking at immediately. And I don't think that helped that second half. It wasn't a great spectacle, and it was tough to watch, especially that. I think it was the third quarter, just after half time, was particularly poor. But I don't think it's the only game in this championship that I thought this isn't a great watch. I watched the game yesterday, and I know it was one-sided, but I just didn't find it a great watch. The standard wasn't, particularly from Italy, wasn't where you would expect it to be in a Six Nations.
Yeah, I think the crowd on Saturday, you could tell that they were getting annoyed about it. But
Yeah.
at the same time, it's hard to sort of criticise Scotland for doing it when it was working up to a point. Obviously, it didn't work in the end, but if they'd managed to hold out for that win, you'd said, you know what, they ground it out, they did well. But it is just boring, isn't it? It's not exciting to watch.
You also don't want to be the guy, if you're Harry Patterson, Finn, Ben White, who says, nah, do you know what, let's have a go here. You get turned over, give away a penalty, and, you know, you put your team on the back foot. It's that risk and reward factor. And ultimately, at the top level, your teams aren't going to take huge risks for the sake of being entertaining when Test rugby is all about winning.
Yeah, I think it's more of a rules issue than a Scotland issue to a point, but I think it's just, yeah, like we say, it's just not exciting at all.
No,
I think that was possibly an issue at the end of the game as well. You know, to be entertaining, Scotland would have thrown it wide to the right and gone under the posts, which I think that they possibly should have done. But instead, they went to pick and go, and I think that you're leaving yourself open to the risk of it being in the officials' hands as to whether they can see it down. But you know, they could have scored and then, they could have gone out wide and dropped the ball or had it intercepted, and we would have been having a different conversation. So it's one of those. And I do think I understand why they were kicking it in the second half, because France were not very good under the high ball in the first half. They were making mistakes, but I think that Scotland perhaps should have plan B again. gone to a different plan when they realise, no, this isn't working. They're not dropping the ball. They're not knocking it on. We need to run this. So.
Yeah, I think just on that point, we've had a couple of comments there. One says the kicking is endless, makes the game a bore. Yeah. And I 100% can see why, you know, where fans are coming from with that, because you know, it is, as we said a minute ago, it isn't exciting to watch. And unless you have somebody that makes a clanger, drops the ball, falls over, some ridiculous carry on, it's pretty dull, you know. But I don't think that's a Scotland problem. I think that is a if you've watched you know, other games in the Championship or Premiership games, I watched Bath Gloucester, and it was Finn was involved in that as well, and it's just not exciting, and the lawmakers just need to do something about it. Interestingly, the other one, Steph, you mentioned a minute ago, the pick and go kind of debate at the end. Yeah. And I think the pick and go thing is, you know, as somebody who played 15 years as a forward, give me a pick and go any day of the week over having to run about and chase a back. But the law change where now if you get held up, it's a goal line dropout and not a scrum 5. You almost lose the incentive for just kind of pick and go, and it needs. I think teams have been a wee bit slow to react to that. Yes, it obviously has a massive reward if you're, you know, a metre from the line and you can just trundle over. I'm not 100% convinced Scotland were ever going to outmuscle France and I think that's where I would have liked to seen them adapt again. I've seen stills on social media of, you know, potentially what looks like a huge overlap for Scotland with Kyle Rowe standing out on the right wing. We've just got to manage that better, and that's the frustration. But as the players said after the game, it shouldn't come down to that. You know, they were 13-10 in front just before half time, and look, everybody loves seeing Scotland score tries, and watching people like Doohan and stuff is brilliant. And I remember going to Murrayfield for a time where all you ever saw was Scotland kick penalties or Dan Parks kick drop goals. But like, there has to be a time and a place for it. 13-10 up with 40 minutes plus gone. Antonio was in the bit, just take the points. Just go 16-10 and build that scoreboard pressure. And I think that's the frustration, that it actually shouldn't have come down to the ref and the TMO at the end, because Scotland were pretty dominant in that first half.
I think it's a frustration that we've had ongoing with Scotland, is, you know, how they obviously got world-class players. they can light up the pitch against anyone, and they can beat anybody on their day. But are they test match animals? Will they win at all costs? Will they take the points just to build the scoreboard instead of sort of backing themselves and going for the corner, which is great. But if you come away with nothing, then it's just, they need to have a ruthlessness about them, I think, from somewhere, and just go for the points because when it makes sense to, because they don't do that often enough. We saw it in the World Cup against Ireland that they had so much ball in that 22. Yeah. And they had opportunities to go for the post and they didn't take it, and they came away with nothing. So I was in that stadium and it felt like so long before we got back to anywhere near the Irish try line, and you just regretted that. So I think that's what Scotland have got to find from somewhere, is just that ruthlessness, not winning at all costs, even if it's not entertaining.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that kind of frustrated people from Saturday was the use of replacements from both teams. I think France kind of cleared their bench pretty early, but Scotland still had a few sitting there at full time. I don't know if Gregor spoke about it at all, Gav, or anything, but it just seemed a bit strange the way, he never didn't really want to seem to use them towards the end of that game. Was it just a case of, the lads out there are doing a good job, stick with them, or what do you think it was?
Yeah, interestingly, he actually, it was one of the subjects he didn't talk about after the game, but it has been raised, and I did think at the time, particularly Xander, to do 80 minutes in an international's almost unheard of for a tight head, particularly against France. That was some shift from him. But yeah, there was guys like, Cam Redpath got the last handful of minutes. George Horn and Ben Healy didn't get on at all. That's 160 minutes for Ben Healy, sat on the bench. Goes back to your point about the makeup of the bench, Mark, and we'll maybe talk about that with some of the, for the England game, with some of the injuries and people coming back, I think. It was strange. Obviously, Andy Christie came on at half time. Sam Skinner got decent minutes, but it is a frustration, I think, among Scotland fans that could Gregor have emptied the bench earlier, and would that have changed the dynamic of that final quarter? I think possibly, but you can only go with what he sees and the data they get. But yeah, I did think it was odd that the three guys I think sitting on the bench at the end of the game who hadn't got on. Yeah,
I think it was Elliot Miller-Mills also didn't get on.
Yeah.
Ben Healy and George Horn, and then even I think Sam Skinner was only on for maybe 6-7 minutes. Cameron Redpath was only a few minutes, so I think it was just, it just felt strange that he didn't go to the bench. I think you could see a couple of players tired. I think especially towards the end when Kyle Rowe made that run up, break out, and almost got to the try line. It was kind of like there was nobody with him at all. It was like it just felt like there was a lot of tiredness in the players at that stage.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, and it's really strange that Miller-Mills didn't get on, because it's sort of standard practice in the game now that you change your whole front row. So that is quite odd, and I'm not a huge fan of bringing on the replacement backs with 5 minutes to go. I mean, it's unlikely that they're going to have the chance to have a massive impact on a game. I mean, they might, but it's unlikely. I think they need to.
I always think it's so hard to get up to speed in that little time that, you're throwing a guy on like Cam Redpath, for example, and saying, okay, go and make a miracle happen. And it just seems so unrealistic, where if you give somebody 15 minutes, they can at least have a couple of them to work their way into the game. And I do feel for Elliot Miller-Mills, because I actually thought he did okay when he came on in Cardiff, and that might be his shot of a Murrayfield Scotland cap gone. Let's hope not, but it might be.
Yeah, I think we'll just finish up with a quick look at the other two games in the Six Nations, or just a quick overview of it. Also, England beat Wales, and then Ireland beat Italy. I think I seen the stat that it was the first time since 1987 that Ireland kept a Six Nations opponent scoreless. So kind of sums up where they are just now. Is it kind of just does feel like a procession to Ireland winning another Grand Slam, doesn't
it? Says the Irishman. Thanks, Mark. Yeah, very good.
I'm very sad about it.
Yeah, no, it's okay. That's it. Rub it in. Do you know what? Yeah, in all seriousness, it does. Their squad's really good. They're really well coached. They've not really missed Johnny Sexton. They didn't at all miss Peter O'Mahony at the weekend. It just feels like, you could pick two players for just about every position. Whether that's Doris or Conan at 8, O'Mahony or Ryan Baird at 6. They've just got like ridiculous strength and depth. And actually, I wasn't convinced they were that good against Italy, as Italy were really bad. But they were probably in third gear and they've won by 40 points. That's the worry for other teams is, okay, if they're absolutely flying, can anybody, can even, France showed last week they can't live with them. Can anybody? And yeah, I'm not convinced. I think Scotland fans who've booked themselves up for a trip to Dublin and St Patrick's weekend might be heading over there to see an Irish Grand Slam, I think.
Yeah, I would agree. I can't see anyone stopping them. The strength in depth they have is ridiculous, and they haven't. In the absence of Sexton, has done absolutely nothing to change just how good they are. And people have talked about the England game potentially being a slight banana skin, but slight. I don't think England have shown us anything that is going to massively trouble them. It's just the fact that it's at Twickenham, and Twickenham still has this kind of aura about it, as opposed sometimes for some opposition teams. But I was disappointed that Italy weren't able to get anything on the scoreboard. I mean, we've talked about progress that they've made, and I genuinely think that they have. But to be nilled, and when they normally, even they caused Ireland a lot of problems in last year's Six Nations. It's just a shame for the championship. It's going to start those conversations again where, should Italy be a part of it? Should we swap them for Georgia? All that kind of chat. It's just a shame. But yeah, it does seem like a procession for Ireland. I don't see it going any other way, really.
Yeah, it's all right. We'll get to the next World Cup, convinced we're winning it, and get knocked out in the quarterfinals again. So, we'll leave it there for the day anyway. Thanks for joining us again, and we will be back at some point to discuss some more rugby. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.